Everybody's got a story. You just have to listen. Oh, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this is Good Listening. For years, I always had trouble separating myself from my job. I was always Joe, the radio guy, and my last name was always the 4 call letters of my radio station. But times have changed, and radio is not what it used to be. And I think this is something a lot of people have trouble with, separating their life from their livelihood. And my guest today can really relate to that. Her name is Anne-Marie Leamy. Annie and I spent 5 years together working at WPLJ, but most recently, she was working at WCBS-FM, a legendary station in New York City. That was until she was let go a few months ago. And so I figured I wanted to get her on the podcast, talk about her life in radio, what she's doing, how is she dealing with this big change in life, and what her life is like now as a mother of 3. Annie, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you? So nice to see you.
Nice to see you. It's been a long time. And before we start reminiscing about the good old days, folks who have followed you on social media, listen to you in New York, know that a little while ago, some heartbreaking news. You were let go at your old radio station. How are you doing? It's kind of like your first public interview, or not that I like to call these interviews, but chat. How are you doing? In terms of like your recovery, because I know we all take these things really hard. What have you been thinking like these last few weeks?
Surprisingly, I have to say this time around, I'm handling it really well. And I say that because I've had a lot of growth over the years. I've learned a lot. And I think now that I'm in my 40s and I have a family, I don't really have time to worry. All I can do now is just think, what's my next step? Where am I going next? And that's really how I'm handling it. I didn't want to let myself go down. When PLJ ended, I just was not healthy. I wasn't healthy. I was just like eating my feelings. You know how that goes. And I was like, oh, the world's over. What am I going to do? I don't know where I'm going to get a job. And it was a long 7 months, severance runs out. I end up bartending. I'm doing food sampling. My good friend Steve from Street Hassle, he works for Defying Bread, had me doing food samplings. I did what I needed to do to feed my son at the time. This time I'm like, I'm not going to allow myself to do that. I'm going to figure this out. So I actually feel okay. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym.
You? Wow. Okay. All right. That's breaking news in itself.
I know. I'm down 10 pounds. I feel a lot better mentally. So yes, I'm actually handling it okay. Am I, of course, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Where am I going to be? Yeah, of course, that's natural. But I'm excited it's a new opportunity to see where my next step is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's funny too, because even though you're one of those cool millennial kids, I feel like you are on the older end. And I don't mean in terms of age, but I mean in terms of mindset. You were very much like the Gen Xer in terms of your job is your identity. It's something that I think we all sort of battle with in our career, because it's you're literally known for what you do, whereas most normal people don't act like that. But people in media and I'm sure certain jobs that you are who your job says you are. You mentioned the struggles you had when PLJ kind of, and I like to joke, we were fired by Jesus at the time. But why do you think you were able to now differentiate a little better now? Was it just because I've been there, done that? I'm not going to let this happen again?
Yes, I think so. My first layoff experience was 2008 when we had the recession and there was thousands of people laid off. It was when it was Clear Channel which is now known as iHeart. And I remember that was my first experience with it. And I was devastated. It still stings when I think about it, because I was working oh my gosh, 60, 70 hours a week. I was bartending I had 3 jobs, and I was making gosh, I think I was making $16,000 a year. And I was like, wait, what? It's not personal. It's just budget. And I remember my dad was like, cry about it for a week and then get your ass out there, or people are going to forget about you. It's time to go. It's showtime. So that was my first time. And then other changes happened. When I came to work for you guys, that was a choice. You offered me a position and I willingly left the job that I was at, that I was really happy at. And same thing with CBS FM. I was doing really great and thriving in the Hudson Valley, but it was a great opportunity. So I think when it happened, I was like, I've been through it. This is my 3rd time. And you get to understand that it's strictly business. It's just is what it is. It's nothing you did wrong. And so I'm trying to shift to what did I take from each job, and what were the good that I learned from it? Also, what was the bad? What were the things that I learned that I shouldn't do next time, or things I could do better?
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's funny because when in 2019, because we worked together for 5 years, it was a lot of fun. When 2019 came down and looked like I joked, divine intervention, I think you probably know this as well. It's it was only going to be a matter of time. Like our parent company was not great. Things were
Yeah.
not good. I don't want to use like the word toxic, but it was not a great environment. By the end of it,
That's a whole other podcast. That
that
can we do that when we retire?
I mean, not that we didn't enjoy it, but it was like it was one of those things where we saw something was going to happen, whether whether Jesus was going to come in and blow us out or something else was going to happen. So there was some writing on the wall, but you still took it hard. I mean, I took it hard to a certain extent, but I think again, me being older and I was fortunate that I never had been laid off, and so to me it was just sort of like a great reset, like at that time. And I'm sure this one is similar, but also like what's next is like the question, like what next can you possibly do? And so I sort of pivoted to podcasting full time, and now who knows what you could do. You may do podcasting, you may do terrestrial radio, but I want to go back to when you joined PLJ. And I remember it was at the time that Scott Shannon was leaving, and we were starting a new morning show with Todd Pettengill as our host, and I was sort of in charge of like who to bring on and help the show. And our mutual friend of ours, Christina Lang, the legendary traffic reporter from New York City, had said to her, "Hey, you keep an eye on this girl Annie. She's really good." And I remember reaching out to you and be like, "Hey, we did a little chat," and I was like, "Hey, there could be opportunities." And I remember listening to some of your stuff. And one of the things that I think people gravitate towards you, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, is just your sort of brutally open lifestyle. The fact that anything that happens in your life is fodder for content, and not that it's intentional, but you've always been open, whether you were doing a radio show or you were like meeting a stranger at one of your bars. I'm sure it's the same thing.
I'm the same
Tell me
person.
where it's all. Tell me where it comes from. Where does that was that in your DNA? Was that something that just sort of happened naturally? How do you think you became this person who is just like literally an open book?
I think it's to be honest with you, the interesting part is when I was a kid, apparently my mom says I didn't talk to the point where in I think first grade or kindergarten, they brought my parents in. They said there's a problem, like she's not speaking, something's wrong. And I was very shy when I was little. But I think my dad, I got to give my dad and my mom too a lot of credit. They built this confidence in me that is not like I'm not egotistical, like everybody look at me, but they always put me in my place about what I was doing wrong, but then always told me there was nothing I couldn't do. So they built up this confidence in me that, like, listen, I know people say things around me. I've had it said online, like, you're an idiot, you're stupid. Like, I get it. I say stupid things. But what I'm confident is I lead with a good heart. I just want to see everybody do well. I just want to love people. I want to meet people. I want to hear your stories. And I think I just like talking to people. And when I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in college, my mom's like, well, you never shut the hell up. Why didn't you try radio? And I think that's what it is. And I can't really think of a time that I talked about something on the radio and the mics went off and I went, oh, I shouldn't have talked about that. That's actually never happened to me because I always felt like it's probably going to piss somebody off, but for the, like, thousands that I just pissed off, if there's one person that heard it was like, "Oh oh, shit, okay, I think the same thing she does." That's my person. Like, I knew there was, like, people on the other side of that dial that were like, if that makes sense, they were my people. They understand my weird stories and my long-winded conversations. And then there's the other side of it, like, this girl's, like, nuts. She's not intelligent. She's not this. She's not that. But I was like, "All right, I gotta have kind of both sides, right?"
Yeah, and it's funny. So you have that openness, but then also you have this wide spectrum of people in your life where how when Donald Trump would do something, there's like they would look back and be like, "Oh, there's a Trump tweet for that." With Annie, there's an Annie story with that. Like no matter what, like if a guy fell down a vat of cheese and was shredded, you would inevitably say, "Oh my God, that happened to my friend in college. He fell down a vat of cheese and was like you literally." I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm talking about. Like people who've been through stuff, and it always seems to come full circle. Like I don't know if we ever said this to your face, but we're always like, whenever we had a topic or a story that came up, we're like, "Oh, I'm sure Annie knows somebody this happened to."
Yes.
You know how
Because I can literally walk at a Target, I can meet someone in ShopRite, and my husband doesn't go anywhere with me now because he's like, "You're so annoying." Because I will meet someone and I will know their life from the time they were born till up to date, but I remember the stories, like, I retain them. I think I'm more just emotionally driven, and I just like storytelling, I like sharing, I just love people, and that was the thing, like, when the job ended, I was sad and I was devastated, but I was like, I'm not giving up because this is what I feel like I should be doing. And it's not just about, for me, it's not, this. For me, it's not about the money. It's not about the like, look at me, look who I am. It's about you're going to connect with people for life. And if I can help them in any way, and I feel like it's kind of twofold, like I'm sharing all these stories, but then we're doing all these cool, like, charity missions where we're giving back. So there are moments of giving back, and it's kind of a give and take. But where else can you do that?
No, no, it's great.
You
No,
know?
and another thing that you've done, and you say the connection word, something that you do since I've known you is just connecting with people on social media, and sort of, I guess, bridging the gap from the 4 hours you're on air to like the other 20 hours on your social media. Tell me about that community you've sort of fostered, and people have followed you from station to station. Like, oh, Annie, like I'm sure if we went to your Instagram feed now, there'd be people like, so Annie, what's next? Where are you going to go now? Where are you going to listen to? Tell me about that connection you've been able to build with people, not just on the air, but off air.
Gosh, that is such a great I mean, that my brain is like, "Oh my gosh, how do I even answer this?" I can't even begin to tell you the community I have in my DMs. What you see, publicly is one thing, but it's really like, if anybody got access to my DMs, you could turn it into a book. And it's like, I've met so many friends. There's a woman who I don't even know how we got connected. We just started chatting, and we were both struggling to have our second baby, and we were going through a lot of stuff. And when I had my kids, I really connected with people that way, I think, because I was on maternity leave and you're up all night. And we've ended up having kids like in the same timeline, but just been there for each other. We've never even met. Like, it's bizarre, but great. Like, I feel like I could go to her anytime in the DMs and be like, "Hey, this is going on." And we would, talk back and forth. Um, so that's the part of social media I love, is there's such a supportive community in there. And some people call my ass out too. Like, if I do weird stuff, you should see the stuff they say to me. They're like, "You got problems," or whatever. But it's just, I don't even know how to summarize it. They've really gotten me through. I wouldn't don't know what I do without that community. And I know that sounds weird because it's the digital space, but it's really powerful. It's really great to have. But you have to, like, be in it. You can't just, some people I think just go on social media. I want to go viral. I want people to like me. I want people to follow me. Well, this is like a give and take. Like, if somebody messages you, answer them back, or if they liked your thing, respond back, because it's not a one-way street. Same thing with radio.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do what you're talking about, and that's the old post and ghost, where they
Yeah.
essentially drop a photo or a tweet and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm never going to interact. But you've kind of like even knew before what an algorithm was, realized, oh, the more I interact with these fans, the more it helps me. And it's funny too, because as you remember when we were working together at PLJ, I was sort of the foil, and I would always, I'd always try to rile you up a little bit. And it was all just part of the
Thank
act.
you for admitting that. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, but it was funny too when I would do something like that to trivia. People would like come on and be like, "Leave Annie alone." So you had this sort of like army, like Annie's army, who would be watching your back, and so that I think, in a way, when I think there's something about people supporting you, when things are well, but when people are supporting you when you're down, I think that's when you've really built a true connection.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do with that, and I'm so thankful, and I thank everybody that's taken time out of I know everybody's busy, everybody's struggling, shit's hard right now, and they take time out of their day to reach out to me and my family. I can't believe it, and it's Sean will know, like, if I'm on my phone, he's like, "Are you on your Instagram DMing with people?" I'm like, "Yeah, at least they talk to me. You're always quiet watching your basketball." So I have, like, these people that I'm hanging out with. But yeah, it's really been a really cool connection, and that's through, like, I think through the radio too. They find me. This last experience, I couldn't believe Joe.
Yeah, my old radio name. Yeah.
Well, how many people are still commenting on my posts about, the change. Every morning I wake up to 5 more comments because they didn't
Wow.
know, and they were on vacation or they were out. And one lady wrote, "I was in the car with my daughter. We couldn't figure out. So I asked ChatGPT where you were." I was like, wow, this is so crazy, or they Googled it, or they're Googling to look for answers as to where I am. Where, I've been in this almost 20 years. When I got laid off, 15 years ago, nobody knew where I went. Poof, I was gone because there was no social media. I mean, I think Facebook might have been starting.
Yeah.
There was no way to know where the person went. Where now they know where you went because you have a profile, which is what I learned. Like you said, you got to kind of retain who you are on your platform. Where back when I first got into radio, everything was for the station and the company. And then when you got let go, it was all there. And then here you were with nothing. So I really appreciate the platform.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Another thing that's interesting, the dynamics of social media and like legacy media, because as you know, Annie, I'm an old guy who started in radio way before social media. So,
Yeah.
and there was like anonymity in it, like no one knew who the hell you were. And
Yes.
then the weird thing for radio people like myself, like when I try to explain to people that when back in the PLJ days, if I went out to a restaurant or store, people would like walk up to me and say hi. And it was like, and like when I tell people that now, they're like, really? That's so weird. I'm like, well, we did have like, 2 million listeners. So the chance of someone running into New York City is common. But for me, it was very strange to make that jump of anonymous radio person to be able to recognize. And I'm sure you, since you are very active on social media, those personal interactions probably happen a lot more than people might expect.
Yeah, absolutely, because I put myself out there, and to be honest with you, Joe, I think that's why I still get to do what I love, because I've always been this vulnerable and this open before there was even social media. Because when I my first radio job, we had the New York Times, the New York Daily News, and AOL, and I had to run to my computer across the hall. We didn't even have texting, like a text phone for the studio. But yeah, like the other day, I was out for breakfast with the kids, and the baby was acting wild, and I'm one of those people, like, I will take my kid out. I don't go anywhere with them if I don't have to. And I was like, "I'm taking you out in the lobby." And this woman came up to me, her name was Shannon. She was so sweet. She's like, "I just had to say hi." She's like, "I've been following you since PLJ." And she's like, "Oh, radio's like my favorite thing, but radio's making it harder and harder to stick around because they keep moving my favorite people." And I said, "Listen, hang in there. It's all gonna work out. It's just the business side. It's all gonna work itself out." And so then she gave me her card, and we connected on social media. And then I looked back and I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been talking to Shannon since like 2019 in my DMs." And it was like, but then I had this moment of, I said to my mom, "Oh my gosh, did I say anything like crazy? Did I like, what did I do?" And she's like, "You were fine. Why?" Because then you start to think like, "Oh my gosh, this was my one interaction with her, one moment in life. And what if I was a complete a-hole or something and I didn't know?" Um, so then she came back to say goodbye. I was like, "Hey, I wasn't." She goes, "No, your kids were great. They're so well behaved." I was like, "Okay, good."
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it
awesome.
happens.
No, that's so cool. All right, you mentioned vulnerability in children, and again, I've known you for a while, and early on, after you got married to that big goofball, your Sean, you wanted to have children, and you were again an open book. You were honest about your difficulties in getting pregnant, and then you fast forward now 5 years, and you're like spitting them out left and right. Uh, Tell me about the family you've got now. They got
Oh my
3 kids.
gosh, yes, I can't believe I have 3 boys. I'm so blessed, I'm so lucky, and I gotta go back to, like, I gotta give Sean a lot of credit because, 1, I'm so glad I married a teacher, okay? Pension, benefits, retirement, he's stable, okay? But no, most importantly, he's a coach. So we've since the day we started dating, I'm not saying things have been perfect, we've been through it. Before we were married, we got all that stuff out of the way, but we're like teammates, really. We're not one of those like, "Oh, we're gonna be," because you guys, you're very affectionate, and I used to make fun of you all the time, like, "You're so lovey-dovey." But we're like, when one's up, the other's down, we support each other, and so he's always been so good like that. And so, yeah, when I was working with you and then I had Michael, and it was so we happened on our honeymoon. I was like, "Wow, this is great. I'm 35, having my first baby." And then, yeah, the struggles just kept coming, and I kept having loss after loss after loss, and went through all the testing. And it really wasn't, I didn't have a problem getting pregnant. I didn't have a problem carrying a baby. They actually said I didn't have fertility issues. It's that my eggs were old. I'm older. I waited. And listen, I waited because I loved radio. And I don't regret that. There were moments where I was, like, blaming my job for it, where I was like, "Why did I put this all off to do this career?" And now I look back, I'm like, "No, I did it the way I wanted to do it, and I did it because I love that job." And it doesn't mean I can't still do it, but it just made it harder to have kids because 'cause you're older. And then, yeah, and then the 3rd came on. That was the 1st month I was working at CBS FM, okay? And I'm driving and I'm like, "Oh," I was like 2 months later, I'm like, "I can't keep my eyes open." I said, "Sean, maybe I can't do the commute anymore because 'cause I'm 41 years old?" And then, yeah, here he is, a little miracle. Just, yeah, I don't know, it must have been in the midst of the the exhaustion or something, but yeah, I'm so lucky and so blessed. So if anybody's in it, just keep trying. And, I'm not gonna say that for some people it doesn't, and that's a reality too, a really, really hard reality. And my heart goes out to anyone that goes through that because I always kept that in top of my mind, like, I'm lucky I have Michael. This is all we have. I'm blessed. But I was determined. I was like, I want more babies.
Yeah, and motherhood was always important to you because you came from a strong family with siblings, and I think we used to often joke about the only child syndrome. How, and again, people make angry at me this, but only children usually tend to be dicks because the world always revolved around them, and having that sibling rivalry and having to share with people. I think it means something. So it was. I think it was important for you to have siblings for Michael. So now that you're a mom, is this what it was cracked up to be? Because I think a lot of people envision being a mother because you only see what your mom you see your side of what your mom experienced. You didn't see what actually mom was experiencing. uh
Yeah.
is it all it's cracked up to be?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I think the really messed up part is you can't say it's hard because the second you say it's hard, well, you should be grateful. You had struggles. Look what God gave you. You got a gift. And but it still doesn't mean I can't say that it's not hard. I think what I'm realizing as I'm getting older is my mom had the village around her. So like if she couldn't make it to the bus drop off, she called the neighbor. We go to the neighbor's house. If she wasn't home in time for dinner, we go eat at somebody else's house. If she couldn't pick us up from practice, like there was like a community neighborhood that looked out for each other. We don't have that. Like I don't have anybody other than grandmas that I can call and be like, "Hey, I got this interview I'm doing with Joe. Can you come watch the kids?" Thank God Sean's off today, but it's the village that's missing. But with motherhood, I'd say the struggle is like when I'm all in on my job, I'm all in on my job. And then when I'm home, all in my home. This last year was hard because the kids were getting sick a lot and things were like when they all three had the flu and I wasn't used to that. And I actually, for the first time, you know me, I don't call in sick. I don't miss a day for nothing. But I realized like this is what's important. But it is hard as the mom because let me give you an example. If God forbid Sean was to get laid off, most people are like, oh man, like I'll help you out. Let's find something. But I don't think many people would say to him, "Oh, Sean, see it as like, you get to stay home and maybe be a stay-at-home dad for a couple of years." Because that's not our reality, unfortunately. Like we both have to work. It's expensive to live and it's expensive to raise kids. So for me, I do feel that like struggle and that pressure of I got to get back out there. I got to make money. My kids got to eat. They eat a shit ton of fruit. That's expensive. Like I have to have a job and our job looks really fun and it's radio, but it's also a job too, and it pays the bills and it supports my family. So I think being a mom and having a career it's really tough, but nothing like the love from these guys. Like Michael still writes me cards, notes. The other day I was having a tough moment and Christian, my middle one's like, "Hey mommy, come here." And I bent down and he just put this big wet slobbery kiss on my cheek and I was like, "Did you know mommy needed that right now?" And he was like, and I was see, I could cry thinking about it. So yeah, the feeling's really amazing just to have that.
That's awesome. And it's funny, you alluded to the fact that, the balance is really difficult. And, me and my wife, we were like, we love being dinks, double income, no kids. We love the idea of, just putting all our passion into work and then our passion into our time when we weren't working to have fun. And I think this is a lot of things like, my day job is working with entrepreneurs. And so like this switch that needs to constantly on when you are working in radio or media in certain jobs where literally like the 9 to 5 doesn't really exist. Or if it does, you're not going to be really good at it because I think to be able to be successful in something where you're creating content, there is no like clock for that. Like, oh,
No.
maybe I'm going to sit down today and let me think about some content. No, we constantly have to be looking. And then doing that when you also have children and having to feed them, that's really tough. So tell me about pre and post, like that pre-Annie when you were the
Are
swinging
you kidding me?
and like you could just like worry about the job and then have it, ladies night with the ladies to now to be like, oh shit, I've got to think about content, but I have these 3 things I got to worry about.
You just brought up exactly before I signed on with you, I was like, my life with you was so different than what my life is now. I was living the life, man. I had no idea. I was like living in an apartment in the city with a friend. We were in a studio apartment, sleeping next to each other, day drinking. Oh, well, Kelly Clarkson's showing up. Let's go interview her. A couple drinks in. Like we were just having a blast. And it was just different. Like I could take each day as it came. And I remember crashing hard when I was at PLJ in the afternoon, like taking those afternoon naps. Then you have kids and you're literally like in survival mode. But this is where I'm different. For some reason, when I'm at work, that switch goes off and I'm at work. And I think what the blessing for radio was I could get up at 3 in the morning while they're sleeping. And I've already fulfilled like an 8-hour day by the time they're getting up and getting going. So then I was home by 2 o'clock to get my kid off the bus and spend the rest of the day with them. But what did that mean? I was up from 3 a.m. and so I could get them all to bed at like 9 and I'm sleeping 3-4 hours a night. So I think now that things have kind of stopped, I realized I was in full like burnout mode. Just from like it was every day, it was just this race of going, going, going. And you're trying to be creative in the moment. But you know what? I will say I'm really proud of myself. I showed up, you know me. I showed up every day with at least 2 content stories a day and was still picking audio that I liked, picking stories that I liked, posting, editing, booking interviews. I was still doing all those things, but I had to switch the gear when I got to work. Like, you're at work now because I never wanted to be treated like, oh, well, she's got kids. She's a mom. because I deserve a seat at the table just as much as anybody else, regardless of what my life is. Because my life will be good. I'll figure that out. But while I'm here, I'm working. So that was, but it was, I'm not going to lie, the exhaustion was real. Like my kids get up like every 2 hours. Like think about that. I drove down every day to the city until I had Aiden, up until the day I had him, and then was back after maternity leave and just didn't miss a day. And he didn't sleep for like 9 months.
Jeez.
Yo, I was going some days there on 1 hour sleep, sometimes two. I was pulling over on the sawmill, walking around pacing to wake myself up, like, it was wild, but here's the thing, I was always grateful because I was like, "I get to do what I love." I'm not trying to be all, like, whatever, like, positive Polly about it, but it's true, like, I never wanted to miss a day because I freaking
Yeah.
love it, like, I love it. I never had the alarm go off and go, "Ugh." I was just like, yeah, I was excited.
That's no, it's great, and it's funny too. Like I want to talk about the things you missed because you're a little now that you've taken they got this little break from the last hour. I'm sure you've got another one coming very soon. But like the one thing I do miss from doing morning radio, and as you know, I did it for 24 years, so I don't miss the hours. I don't miss having that alarm going off at 3 o'clock in the morning. But from going through that to podcasting, where you kind of have a little more of a 9 to 5 flexibility, is that sort of sense of urgency and the live is live and like you got to get this right the first time. I think that's the one thing I probably miss the most. It's just sort of like it's almost like a drug. Like when that light is switched on, you're like you're on. It's not like no take twos. What are some of the things that now that you've had a chance to reflect on this second layoff from 5 years? Is what do you think in terms of like what are you missing most right now?
The everyone on the other side of the dial. And that's what I said when it was happening. I was like, "It's all good. I understand business, business, but the people on the other side are what matters." Because you can have all the titles you want, you can have all the accolades you want. If you're not making a real impact in people's lives and making change or supporting the community that's given back to you, from all the different missions we did, then what are you doing it for? Just for yourself? And I get, yes, there's people that are in it just for themselves, totally, and that's fine. And maybe I'm thinking of it the wrong way, but I just miss that connection. I miss talking to people every morning. Like I do. I really do. I miss just shooting the shit on the air and never knowing what's gonna land. Like my favorite calls were the people from, "Hey, we're on Metro North. Hey, I'm a tax cab driver." A lot of Uber drivers now, Uber Eats, and the bus drivers and just hearing how crazy their day is, or someone's having like a really shitty morning and they're like, they feel better because you're upbeat and you're laughing and you're positive. I miss that because I miss that 6 o'clock. That because anybody that's met me in the studio, even like important guests sometimes are like, "Wow, you curse a lot." I'm like, "I know, sorry." But there's something that would happen when that mic switch went off. It just was so exciting. And so I'm excited. I want to get back. I'm ready to get back. I'm not giving up. Um, and I just think radio itself is just we gotta get back to the people. We gotta get back to the people because that's where it counts.
Yeah. And that personal connection is important. And obviously what you do and what, I've kind of joked about is the fact that you've got so much content, whether it's something that happened to you or that friend that fell down the cheese vat and got cut in half or something. But also because of the monoculture that doesn't exist. Like we're not, and you're still old enough to remember this, like the 3 channel universe where everyone watches the same shows.
Yes.
Now everything is so fragmented. So tell me about
Yes.
how you try to be sort of appeal to a broader audience when you're working in radio, even though you do have a set demographic, but also just keeping an eye on what's important to that certain demographic. Because when we were younger, it was like everyone was like, "Hey, did you watch Seinfeld last night?" And everyone would have watched Seinfeld that night and talked about it the next morning. People like, "Hey, did you watch Last of Us?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm gonna get to it in a couple weeks. I want to watch." So like that idea of everyone being on the same schedule is hard. And then also when it comes to celebrities, and I'm sure you've run this over the last few years, be like, whatchamacall, who's that? Oh, he's got 10 million followers and he does surfing with like, with a bread basket on his head. Like there's all these weird celebrities you have to keep track of. So tell me about how you funnel like sort of the fact that we don't have this monoculture, everything is broken off into what delivers, quality content to your audience.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that my biggest lesson in that, and I gotta give you credit, I've told everybody you're the greatest executive producer I've ever seen, and I took a lot of what you did when I got my opportunity to have my own show here in the Hudson Valley, iHeart, and I just followed, like, your Google Drives and all your stuff. I tried to emulate that planning out, but then COVID happened and everything changed. Everything changed. Nobody was on this schedule anymore. Nobody was getting up early. Like 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. used to be prime real estate, right?
Yeah.
Now nobody's getting up and getting going until 9. I even see it now that I'm like, wait, what? Where is everybody? So that changed a lot. And at that time, we had boosted everything into the 9 o'clock hour, like at 9 a.m. is where we were doing a lot of our meat of our stuff. And of course, the second date updates and the blown off and all those fun things. But what changed is that connectivity. You can't bring up a TV show that people are waiting to watch on Friday because nobody gives a shit about that. Because, like you said, everybody's doing whatever. So for me, it became more about like we do the fun games, but it was really relatability. So bringing up content that people could relate to. And I had to go off of the point I was in my life. So my son wants a tablet or a video game. He wants a Nintendo Switch. I'm not ready for him to be into gaming yet. What do you think? Who can't relate to that? Then you got the parents that are like, no, keep it away from him until he's 15. Then you have the parents who are like, no, it's great. It helps him learn. He's going to need to know how to do that anyway. So it's really like, to be honest with you, Joe, you have to think 10 times harder about relatable content. It actually became tougher because before you could just talk about pretty much anything and everybody would relate. Now everybody's schedules and lives are so parents are shuffling their kids to 10, 15 different sports. They're away on the weekends. I think appointment listening is still a thing for the people that commute into the city. So I think the people that are still on that, because I had things that if I didn't hear them at a certain time, I was freaking out too. Like I should be at this exit when this report comes on. But that group of us is kind of getting smaller. So you just have to think a lot harder, you know, and I think that's why on social media and podcasts, everybody's just throwing stuff out there to see kind of what sticks, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's so funny, God. I brought a flashback of like the content that we would have to prepare because, like you said, six to eight was kind of prime time, and then you like 8 to 10 was sort of like you'd regurgitate some of the 6 to 8 stuff, and then it'd be like sort of like the cemetery of content. Like, all right, what's left? We'll just stop in the 9 o'clock hour. So it's so funny. That's right. With COVID, no one was commuting to work, and you had this weird thing where people were just kind of like getting up at like 8 as opposed to like 5. So it was
Yeah.
weird. I think that, and that's, I remember too, that reminds me, I remember we would have, like, you would always have hardcore listeners who would listen to 4 hours, and God bless them, but we couldn't make a living off them. We had to have people that would check in. So, and you probably remember this too, where we would do like a bit at like 6:30 and then repeat it at 8:30. And people are like, why'd you do that again? That was 8:30. I'm like, listen, if there were more people like you listening 4 hours, we wouldn't have to do that. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. So it is funny. I remember like when we do like a best of show when we're off, people are like, I heard that 2 months ago. And I'm like, because again, not everyone's listening to for 4 hours. Again, those super fans are amazing, but unfortunately, we couldn't make a living off of those super
Yes,
fans.
you need, and the thing is too, everybody's punching in for, I find myself doing it when I'm in the car now, just going from station to station to station. And it's like, oh, that's a boring conversation. Oh, that, I don't like that song. Or it's when somebody just grabs you. And I think that was the big thing is you got to come out. You know how you used to have to say station, weather, there was all these certain things we always did. Now it's just like, come right out the gate with what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
you know, my kid kept me up all night. What about you? You know, you just got to get right into it now. And like you said, there's nothing like the live, though. You got to be live and you got to be on it. And I think that's the changes that this is the thing. Radio is going through a lot right now. And I know the dust is going to settle, but the power of the FM signal is that it is live and it is in the moment. And people are, they are tuning in. They are tuning in. It's just that when you say radio, they go, oh, radio. But no, it is real. I saw it. I saw the impact. I saw how much money we were raising for events. And it's like, it's still there because it's companionship that you can't find anywhere else. Because if it's a, you know, a channel that's pre-recorded, yes, that's great. But you know, you kind of know in the back of your mind, they're not there. Where with radio, you know that they're sitting in that studio and they're out on the road with you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's funny. I think radio has been eating itself for the last few years. I mean, you've worked for some major companies, and I think iHeart's partially responsible. Like when I was growing up, I don't know about you, Andy, but like every town in America had 2 or 3 morning shows, and they were all local. And then, you know, fast forward to now where local morning shows in the, you know, mid-range of markets just doesn't exist. It's just the large. So in a way that's, and I remember a few years ago, and someone would say like, who's the next radio superstar? Because we know the Ryan Seacrest and Elvis Duran's, but who's next? I'm like, they're already here. They're just on YouTube. Like they just, you know, they went to YouTube or now podcasting. So I think the people, like if you look to like the top 10 YouTubers now, I think if you put them in another time, like you put them in these, they probably would have been morning radio stars. It's just, but the talents and then the opportunities were not there, you know, when they were growing up. So like, oh, YouTube's a place to go. I'll grow my community. So that stuff, and for someone like you, Andy, who's, you know, looking for another opportunity, and I don't want this to be like a billboard for you looking for your next job, but like, what do you see in terms of like what would a good opportunity look for you right now in your point in your life? I mean, is it just like, hey, listen, I gotta get a gig? Is it the gig's gonna
No.
be right for me? Like, tell me about what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's gotta be right. I think, when I built my own show, with iHeart in the Hudson Valley, I mean, it was like one of the best experiences of my life. I was able to cultivate this group, the co-host I was working with, he was a full-time illusionist. The guy that was doing our celebrity update, I should say Ryan Dutcher, Mike Post, he moved to North Carolina. We'd check in with him on Skype. And then Marissa, who was doing our morning pick me up, our good news, she was in promotions and I got 12 hours for her to come on with us, but they would stay because they loved it. And we just loved each other. And I think I want to get back to that team effort. I know it's hard because the problem for me is what I'm seeing is the younger generation is not like there's no hand pulling them in. And I tried my best when I was in that position but the hours aren't there or the spots aren't there. And I think that's the part where I have to kind of figure out I'm in this kind of figure out where's the industry going at this point. Everybody's starting to have 2 major roles. You're seeing a lot of, like, PDs that are also hosting or they're doing promotions, but they're also doing a show, which is great. So I think I'm kinda looking at it, is it something I need to have, different 2 titles? I mean, but technically behind the scenes, you are doing all those things, which is so
Yeah.
interesting. You have to make sure, like, I gotta make sure I have that title. Like, even at my last job, I was doing producing as well. I was editing, booking, doing all that kinda stuff, but it wasn't in my title, so I think I just wanna get back to it. I'm seeing a lot of, small community, radio stations. There are some private owners that are buying them up and wanting to do some great things with them, so I am hopeful that that can happen, and, yeah, I think it's just gotta be the right situation, and you know me, I'm a hustler. I worked 2 jobs when I was at PLJ. I already had stuff lined up to bartend this summer, like, I will figure out what I need to do to feed my family, but I think as my husband and I said, like, it's gotta be the right position. It's gotta feel right, and every job I took has felt right, but I can't control what's gonna happen. All I can do is perform the best I can, and, but I'm not giving up. I'm ready. I'm so ready, and I miss it.
Lastly, let's ask about that big goofball, Sean, who I think you guys met at a bar when you were bartending or something like that many, many years ago. Tell me about the last, few years now. You guys going from like these two doofuses who'd but drink all night, have a good time, to like be parents and like form a family,
Yeah.
having him as a partner.
He's the best, and I don't wanna be I always feel like those people that are, like, all gushy about their partner, you're like, "What are you really hiding?" No, I'm just kidding. But, like, I don't know what I would do without him because he's my biggest teammate, and you said to me I'm gonna say this right now, you literally said to me, I would walk in one day and listen, when you're way up there, like, people get a lot of vacation time, so there was a time where it was like the Monk and Annie show a lot of the times, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, like, 'cause we get there, I'd be like, "What's going on? Where's" and you said to me something that has stuck with me since that day. You said, "Annie, you need a champion. You need a champion in your life." I'm like, "What do you mean?" You're like, "You need a champion. You need somebody who's behind you, like, pushing you, boosting like, you can only do so much, but if they don't know what you're doing." And I finally realized, like, my husband's that champion. Like, he never lets me dwell on it. He never lets me but he gets frustrated too because he's just like, "Man, it's a really" like, because it's a tough industry, but I don't know what I do without him, and I think he gets to do what he loves, and I get to do what I love, and we're a well-oiled machine, if that makes sense. I know that sounds really weird. He coaches college basketball. So he teaches all day, shoots down to Westchester, and coaches the men's basketball. He's the assistant there at night. He's away on the weekends, New Hampshire, all over, hours away, right? But I hold down the fort when he's gone. But he also knows when I have events I have to host. I have one coming up in a couple weeks. He's home. So we're literally, like I said, we're teammates and we both get to live out what we love. He loves coaching and he loves teaching, and I love radio. And then we get to have these kids see 2 parents that are working their ass off doing what they love, which is what I keep telling my kids. I don't care what you do. I just don't want you waking up miserable. And listen, sometimes you have no choice. Look, I'm in the position where I have no choice right now. I got to go sling some drinks. I got to make some money eventually, but if you can, you got to just seek what you love. And I think Sean and I, our connection is that we're both doing what we love and we keep it real. But I will tell you, yeah, he's the best. I don't know what I do without him because and now he speaks up for me. Like when I'm like, "You don't have any idea how hard it is to be a woman in my industry," and then people are like, "Ah," and he goes, "Hold on." Like now he understands what my struggle has been, and that's not all the struggle, but it is a part of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know what I do without him.
Ah, that's great. Great stuff. All right. So, Annie, if folks want to follow along your journey, I know you're all over socials. Where should they start to keep track of you if they haven't done so already?
So I've never been on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I haven't ventured down that road yet. So I'm mostly on Facebook and Instagram. Annie on air. I had to think about that for a second. Yes, Annie on air. You can hit me up in the DMs. I'll answer you back. And I'd love to meet whoever wants to connect.
Awesome. Well, good luck, Annie. It's great catching up with you. And I'm sure, like you said, you're fine. You're gonna be just fine. So I appreciate you letting me know what's going on in your life. And hopefully, let's not wait 5 years to chat again. Okay.
No, I'm gonna come see you. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna come crash where you are.
Anytime, Annie. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for this episode. If you enjoy the show and you're watching on YouTube, tap that thumbs up button. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star review would be gratefully appreciated. If you want to catch up on past episodes or read up my blog, go to joepardavila.com. Until next time, adios.